How's it going, folks? Graham, GS, and Matthews here, back with another episode of WWE Network and Chill right here on the YouTube channel. Today we're talking about the WWE 24 special Brooklyn that aired last fall, focusing on the TakeOver Brooklyn show from August of 2015. Like I said earlier, it's really hard to say what my favorite 24 special is, and this is why I really like the idea of doing this show for the YouTube channel and talking about original programming that's aired on the network, like WWE 24, Breaking Ground, and everything else, which I'll talk about, which I'll be talking about next. Beyond this special, my next, starting next week or starting my next episode of WWE Network and Chill, because these original programs are so fucking good. And I love this one specifically. I mean, I'll probably talk about the Rollins one at some point, the Daniel Bryan one, even the Roman Reigns one, WrestleMania's 30, 31, 32, whatever. There's a lot of great 24 specials. I just love this one specifically, and I am 100% biased here just because I was at this show. So seeing everything that went into it, the reactions to some of the matches, just different shots of the matches and crowd reactions is just phenomenal. And one of those specials, a lot like the Reloaded special, where you're almost on the verge of tears at like 5 different points throughout the special because it's really that emotional, and everyone in it just comes off super well. So anyway, so we kick it off, and the first couple minutes of the special kind of recap what NXT is all about, and it's perfect for anyone that is not aware of what NXT is or just needs a reminder. Is what once was WWE's developmental territory. And it still is, obviously, it very much still is a developmental territory and the building the foundation for the future. But you look at what it was even 4 or 5 years ago at a point where they were filming at a freaking warehouses and it was a shitty-ass competition show, which they didn't mention here and they didn't really need to. But they talked about Triple H. You see Triple H in a meeting and like, wow, TakeOver Brooklyn, like this is going to be fucking huge. And they talk about Arrival, and that was their first ever special on the WWE Network. Kevin Owens saw that and said, I need to be a part of that. They show clips of FCW and having to perform in front of 5-10 people, and now competing, now wrestling in front of 15,000 people in the Barclays Center. The evolution of NXT has really been something to behold. They talk about Full Sail University, and that's kind of played host to NXT ever since it was revamped back in 2012. Their crowds are super rowdy, super energetic, super passionate about the product, which is super cool. And the thing about the crowds, too, they get a lot of shit sometimes for, chanting things that are stupid or things that take away from the matches. Honestly, I'd have a crowd like that than a crowd that doesn't do anything at all. I'd rather have a rowdy crowd that's annoying at some points than a crowd that never makes any noise and just completely takes away from my excitement of a match. For me, anyway, that's just my 2 cents. But they talk about touring of NXT, how they went to Columbus and the San Jose show at WrestleMania 31 weekend. They sold that out in like 2 hours or something like that. And they've really come a long way. They went from those shows to selling at the Barclays Center WrestleMania week, or rather SummerSlam weekend in 2015, doing the same exact thing this past year in 2016 too. So it really is just something to behold. But anyway, so on this show, we get a little bit of insight on Charlotte, Banks, Becky Lynch, Kevin Owens, as they're all leaving NXT following the TakeOver show. Charlotte and Becky Lynch are not on TakeOver. They are on the episode of NXT that aired after TakeOver, the subsequent Wednesday, but they do film matches in front of the Barclays Center, in front of the Barclays crowd, in front of the Brooklyn crowd before the TakeOver special that same night. And then Kevin Owens is in the main event for the NXT Championship and a ladder match against Finn Balor. And then Sasha Banks is competing against Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship. We get some background of Finn Balor, how he grew up, kind of an abbreviated version of those video packages that we got on Balor back in the summer of 2015, en route to him winning the NXT Championship in Japan. Where he came from, what he's all about, who and what the Demon is, and his face paint, which is pretty fucking cool. Like how that kind of comes together. We'll talk more about that later. Kevin Owens, too, also talks about making it to WWE, and as I said earlier, watching that Arrival special a year and a half earlier and saying, I want to be a part of that. But he also mentions this really cool little story about how he went to TLC 2012, which was also in the Barclays Center, WWE's first ever event there ever. It was the pay-per-view event, and he went there to go see his buddy Seth Rollins compete in his first ever WWE match. And he's there with a buddy of his, and he can kind of see that Kevin Owens was really anxious and maybe kind of let down or whatever, that he wanted to be at that level. And his friend kind of looked at him and said, you'll be there someday. And look at that. Only 3 years later, less than 3 years later, he's main eventing the Barclays Center in an NXT championship match sanctioned by WWE. Just, again, that's what dreams are made of. Just absolutely amazing. We get some more focus on Sasha Banks growing up as a wrestling fan and being this super huge mark, as we all are, but writing down notes and shit about Raw and SmackDown. Always wanted to be a women's wrestler, not a fucking diva, and people are buying tickets to see them. her training and how she's super young at this point. She's only 23, 22 years old. She's super, super young. But she talked about growing up and only being like a 90 pounds when she first started wrestling, and people were kind of anxious or rather nervous in getting in the ring with her because they felt like they'd break her in half. But she's like, I'm tough. Just give it to me. And she mentions how she's the cousin of Snoop Dogg, and how being the cousin of Snoop and being the cousin of Snoop Dogg and how people would call him Boss. She adopted that for herself and calling her the Boss, and that's how the nickname came about. And I don't know if I knew that before then, but it is a cool little fun factoid for anyone that did not know that. So it's pretty cool to find out the origin of the Boss nickname for Sasha Banks. We see some footage of the SummerSlam panel that was taped early on, I think on Friday, or rather Saturday. TakeOver was on Saturday. The SummerSlam panel that took place on Saturday morning with Seth Rollins and a lot of the stars from NXT, which Seth Rollins is a part of, and he talks about having, started his career off in NXT when it was, still developmental as it is today, obviously, but when NXT first really kind of came into its own at Full Sail University, becoming the first ever NXT champion. He talks about the evolution of the brand, and that's really kind of set him up for the future. At that point, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. The women's division, Sasha Banks talks a lot about in that SummerSlam panel and how when she first came into WWE, she was taught by whoever was training at that time to wrestle like a diva. No real wrestling moves, just punching and clawing. And she's like, no, I want to wrestle. I want to fucking fight. And that's really what the women's division, both in NXT and WWE, have evolved into, which is absolutely incredible. But that's really, really cool to hear about. And I don't know who was training the women before Sarah Del Rey, before Sarah Amato. I'd have to look that up, but whoever that was, and they obviously did a very poor job, because when they brought in Sarah Del Rey in 2012, she did an amazing job in really revamping the women's division and changing the way that people look at women's wrestling. And now people are buying tickets to see the women wrestle. I know I saw them. I paid to go see them, Banks and Bayley last year in Brooklyn. So it really is something special. But we also get the similar background focus on Bayley too, her background growing up as a wrestling fan. And the best part about this, and I think this was when these little videos made their debut, I don't think we had seen anything like this beforehand, the poems and the letters and the essays that she wrote to herself in high school, all being about wrestling. I could very much relate to that. But she talks about one day making it to the WWE as a women's wrestler. So she pretty much breaks down in a few points in reading these letters and how her dreams ultimately came true. And her mom realizes that, and she's super proud of her too. But she talks about her character, and Sasha Banks talks about it as well, and how her character is basically Bayley. That's exactly who she is, but just turned up to like a 14, She's still a fan on the inside, but just super energetic and positive and optimistic and happy, and it's really an infectious character. We see a little bit of Tyler Breeze here, not so much as we did in Breaking Ground, but we do hear from him a little bit. I wish we heard some more from him, but it is whatever. He faced Jushin Thunder Liger at that show, which was a great match. But he talks about his entrance and how, the whole purpose, the whole mindset of his entrance, the whole theme of it, I guess, is that when he walks down, he's there to visit New York City and see all the sights, and he has all the supermodels down the runway, and each of them has, something that can be associated with New York, such as, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, blah, blah, blah. So that's a really, really cool entrance, and to hear from Tyler Breeze about that is awesome, too. And he gets a brief run-in with William Regal backstage, and he says, "Don't disappoint me, Tyler," in kind of a joking manner. And Tyler Breeze said, "Never. I would never do such a thing, Mr. William Regal." So that's pretty cool. And focusing on Kevin Owens, too, like I said, in addition to talking about his background, we see him a lot with his son throughout the entire special. And Kevin Owens, if you didn't already know, is a great freaking father. The guy is the real father of the year. He just gets along with his son super, super well, and they just have this real connection that just can't be denied, and it's just super amazing to listen to, and it's awesome. But he shows his son around. You see his son wearing a Kevin Owens t-shirt, and he butts heads with him, but he hugs him in the front row before his match with Balor, which is really cool. Becky Lynch gets visited by her family, who she had not seen since Christmas the year before, so it's a really, really cool reunion for them, and to see Becky Lynch doing what she loves and wrestling, and after having so many jobs, which she talked about on Talk is Jericho a couple months back, and that's super cool to see her living out her dream as well. Like you mentioned earlier, Finn Balor talking about his body paint and how it's really a long process, and how the mindset behind each image and whatever he uses as his body paint means something. It's not done for just looks or for appearance. Everything that he does and everything that he paints on his body as part of these takeover specials has significance in some form or fashion. So that's really, really cool to hear about as well. And he's preparing for the match and how the rehearsals for his entrance And I got to meet one of those people too, by the way. I got to meet one of the people that was a part of the entrance on the train ride home from Brooklyn, which was super fucking cool. The guy was so decked out in his Finn Balor face paint and gear and shit. It was awesome. And there's not just a fan too. He was a legitimate stunt double for that Finn Balor entrance in Brooklyn, which was amazing. But he talks about the body paint, but, Balor's like a perfectionist. So like I said, he wasn't really happy with the way the rehearsals, went off and how they really kind of came off. And he did 30 of them, and maybe he's exaggerating, but he did a lot of them, and none of them went right. Not once did they do whatever they wanted to do right. So builds up a lot of anxiety going into the main event. Becky and Charlotte, we see some focus on them, and they're just kind of talking about their match and whatever. We see Becky getting ready for her match and how she loves the crowd, and Charlotte, reuniting with her father. Bayley and Banks, so what can I say? The match was incredible. The reaction to it is even cooler. We see a giant focus on the match itself and like move by move and how the match kind of unfolds. But we also see reactions from Bayley's mother, from Sasha's mother in the front row. We see reactions from Cesaro afterwards, how the match kind of came about. From Seth Rollins, who's sitting in the front row with his girlfriend. He kind of tears up after watching the match and their masterpiece of a match that it is. And just everything about the match and how great and how awesome it comes together. And how even beforehand, Bayley made the very bold statement that they were setting out to make women's wrestling great again. How they were setting out to have the greatest women's wrestling match of all time. And they definitely did that. They had an absolutely incredible match and easily the greatest match I've personally ever seen live. But the story behind it, the in-ring action, the drama, everything about the match is just so perfectly built. There's just so many great dynamics, so many great elements to this match that make it such a masterpiece. And I've talked about it a million times before, so I won't review the match here. But this special is worth watching to see the reactions from everyone involved. The 4 horsewomen reuniting afterwards. Banks crying, Charlotte crying, Becky crying, Bayley crying, everybody crying pretty much. Rollins, the moms, everybody. So it really is a cool moment. We see something similar with Kevin Owens and Finn Balor. Kevin Owens knew going in that he really had his work cut out for him and having to follow that match, but they did a very good job of doing just that. I still say that obviously the women's match was better, but Owens and Balor had a tremendous ladder match as well. We see his family in the front row. Both of them take some crazy-ass bumps. In the end, it's Finn Balor closing out the night with his championship held high, still the NXT champion. He said that was bittersweet for him, how he can go on for another 20 to 30 more minutes and having a lot of fun with his match. And even though emerging victorious, still the NXT champion, how he could wrestle for another 20 to 30 more minutes in this NXT Championship ladder match. They kind of close off the show with that. They talk about Dusty Rhodes' impact on NXT, and now he's really made NXT what it was. He had just passed away 2 months, I think, before the special took place. So how everyone pretty much in this special, Bayley paying tribute to Dusty Rhodes, Finn Balor doing the same. Kevin Owens had a very strong connection with Dusty Rhodes too. So how he kind of influenced a lot of the athletes that were part of this special. And just pretty much at the end of the show, they have a recap of every match in the show, the ladder match, the women's match, Apollo Crews' WWE debut against Ty Dillinger, how great that came off in his first ever WWE match, the NXT Tag Team title match of the Vaudevillains beating Blake and Murphy to win the gold. We get some comments from Blue Pants being brought in and the amazing pop that she got when she came out. Just a giant recap of pretty much every match on the show. Fans' reaction to it and how it really was, in my opinion, up to this point, the greatest NXT TakeOver special that WWE has ever done. So we'll see if WWE can top it with this year's installment, also in Brooklyn in the Barclays Center. So this entire 24 special clocks in at about 54, 55 minutes. But it's well worth the watch. It really kind of just flies by, but it really is a really cool perspective, another different perspective at what was an amazing show in Brooklyn that WWE put on in the form of NXT TakeOver in August of 2015. So check it out. If you love TakeOver Brooklyn, you'll love this special. Getting a different look at the people like Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Bayley, Banks, Tyler Breeze, pretty much all the integral parts, Triple H as well, everyone that made NXT what it was and made this the show of 2015. So check it out, only the WWE Network. The next installment of WWE Network and Chill should be talking about the Season 1, Episode 1 of Total Divas, so be sure to check that out as well. And I'll catch you folks down the road. I'm Graham Jason Matthews. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is amazingly appreciated. And I'll catch you folks in the next episode.